Welcome you all. A new face up here tonight. I'm George Seafried. I'm the new president as of last month. Bob has finally decided to sort of hang up his spurs and take on a lesser role, but still quite involved in our association. So I will be saying just a few comments here tonight that I'd like to just bring to your attention. This is a very busy time of the year for ESLA. We do a lot of our sampling, we do a lot of the work in the water, analysis of our results are sort of put off until the fall and the winter. But this is very busy. We look for our invasives, we're out taking samples of dissolved oxygen, the clarity of the water, and all those things you heard a little bit about last month. One of the main things that I wanted to share with you tonight is, as you can tell by the crowd, and we still got some people that are standing, we really like to have you RSVP for the event. So if you can do that, it'll make it a little easier for us to plan for the seating, for the beverages, also for the name tag, so it wouldn't be so crowded when you come in the door. So if you have the opportunity to do that when we advertise that, we'd appreciate that in the future. A big thing that I would like to instill, starting with my presidency, is to open up a little bit more of the communication between the board and you, our members. I think it's very important that we understand at the board the kinds of things that are important to you. I think you all know that the mission of ESLA is to protect our waters and keep them, check the qualities and make sure that the lifestyle of living on the water and the quality of our waters, all the way from Rapid River down through the water into the bay, through the Elk River, is what we expect, we love. Some of the things that you'll see tonight are an example of how wonderful the nature and wildlife is in this area. So what we'd like to do is get a little bit more communication from you. And I would ask any of you that have information that you want to share with us, you can give us your message on our email on Elk-Skegemog. There's an email address for us. Please send us messages. Be glad to get back with you and discuss what your thoughts and issues are, and the programs you'd like to see, the kind of work we're doing with the funds that you contribute to us. So please reach out to us. Let us know what you think is going on and what you'd like to see happen. The last thing I'll say before we introduce Steve is that we have two more of our Sure Thing events that are taking place. Next month on, I believe it's August 22nd, another Thursday evening right here, we're going to hear about swimmer's itch with Ron Rimmick, who has been studying this for quite some time. So we're going to, the current theory on what causes swimmer's itch. And as you know by your giggles, that you've heard lots of different stories and over the years here as to our cause and effect of these things with the birds. And then on September 26th, again, another Thursday, that will be our last Sure Thing event for the season. And that will be an evening where we will hear about wake boats and the proper operation, if you will, how wake boats are used around our lakes, particularly the lakes that are susceptible to erosion. So we're going to have a speaker that's going to talk to us about that. So that's all I have to say. Are there any comments? Starting to open up any conversation. Anybody want to bring anything up tonight? Good, thank you. I'm going to have Bob introduce our speaker.
I would work better with a teleprompter, to tell you the truth. You all know about teleprompters and the issues there. And then, of course, there's issues with your phone going on. Anyways, I first heard rumblings about an amazing loon photographer who lives on the Torch River, at least part of the time, last January when ESLA's board was considering our Sure Thing speaker. His name was Steve Jessmore, and I wanted to learn more about him. So I checked his website, his bio on the website. I called some photographer pals. I've probably said it before. I spent my career in journalism. most of it at the Detroit Free Press. There's a number of those photographers here tonight who helped me inform this decision about having Steve with us tonight. There was no question after I did that Tesla had to get Steve in here to talk to you. The cherry on top was that Steve and his wife Brenda own a cottage on the Torch River and are Tesla members. A little applause. Here's a few things that you should know about Steve. He was named Michigan's top news photographer 5 times for newspaper work. The Detroit papers, I'm told by friends who work at the Detroit papers, tried hard to lure him, but Steve wasn't moving, not at least until he left the Flint Journal in 2013 to pursue a freelance career. His fascination with bird and wildlife photography did not begin until 2020, when as a freelance photographer, I think he found himself unable to shoot in a lot of the indoor places that he was used to shooting. And he decided, well, what the heck, let's see what I can do, especially with birds. I live in a place with a lot of cool birds. So Steve bought a kayak. He shifted his energy, all of his energy, to birds, paddling out with his cameras and incredible lenses in the wee hours, sometimes before sunup. Always before sunup. Remember that if you're going to try to duplicate anything that he's done here. He made friends with loons and long-necked cranes and other feathered critters. The result, he won first place in both 2021 and 2022 in the National Audubon Society's professional division, where he was competing. As you can imagine, that competition was against hundreds of others, and I don't know the number, thousands of other pictures that were submitted. So that's a pretty amazing accomplishment. You saw a few of Steve's pics in the email blast that we sent out for tonight's meeting. Sorry if we weren't clear on the program starting at 5:30. But you all got a chance to get your beer and wine. Among other things that I think you will hear are a few tips on how to improve your picture taking of the spectacular scenes that appear and disappear in seconds along, above, and on the water from the places that we have the pleasure to be living in as members. So, welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Bob. Usually when I tell people I just started taking bird pictures in 2020, they don't believe me. So that's usually, I see the crowd just kind of go, yeah, right, okay. You've only done this for a few years. And he's kind of stolen all my thunder a little bit here. I literally had not shot any birds, hadn't even thought about shooting bird pictures till late in COVID year, probably September, October, something like that. And we have a place on Torch, and I would sit on the deck, and I worked at Central Michigan University as a photographer at that point, full time. I met my second wife, my first wife. I never would have ever done any of this with. Honestly, God, 31 years, I never, it just wasn't something that was going to happen. And, my wife Brenda, we've been together 10 years. I inherited Torch through her. This all landed in my lap. It was a wonderful place, and I would sit on the deck, I'd read books, whatever. Swan would go by, I didn't really pay attention. I have a biology degree from way back at CMU, never used it. I have like a big art background, never really used it. Used it in my photojournalism. But just this has allowed me to mix all of my learning and pull it together. But what I want to do is take you on a little quick tour because I have done a lot of stuff. This will be my 50th year in photography coming up. I'm going to be 65. I wanted to take pictures. Actually, I wanted to go to concerts when I was in high school. And my parents told me that I couldn't go. They were too expensive. I saw Queen and Bob Seger, $6.25. Too much money. I don't know if you guys can remember that, but I said to them, I said, hey, if I can find a way to go to concerts and not have it cost me any money, can I go? And they both laughed at me and said, sure. So I took my 5x7s down to the Saginaw News. I was 15 years old. I told them I can do this job. I said, here's my prints. Here's, look at all the pictures I've shot from my first 2 concerts. My dad, here's his number at work. Here's my mom's number at home. We had no cell phones. Here's my school office number. Call me. I will be there, whatever you need me. So I shot over 100 concerts while I was in high school. All of a sudden, we're not going here. Hang on a second. Anybody know who this is? 1980, Def Leppard, backstage. First tour. So they're on the big stadium tour now, 40-some years later. All in the 70s. This is the kind of seats I got, I got to do the front row, second row all the time. Got to go to over 100 concerts while I was in high school. So I decided, at that point I was still going to go pre-med, pre-dent, pre-something in college. I went to CMU, took 18 and 21 credits. I hated all that stuff, all the sciences. I kept the biology, but I went into journalism, and I became a photojournalist. And, I think photographing people, during the concerts, and I would freelance in the summer for the Saginaw News when I was in college. And, it was just a wonderful thing. I really liked telling stories about people. And I really liked the journalism ethics where we didn't pose anything. It was all natural. It was telling stories. You get an assignment, you'd go out, and it was up to us to be creative and be creative within the confines of reality and to be able to tell these stories of people doing things, basically. And I just loved it. I loved the in-between time on these assignments to find these, work on and develop big, long photo stories. Like I spent a year with this farm family. But it allowed me to, find some really cool visual moments and, tell the story about what it was like over time. We did a lot of spot news. This young guy's trying to explain why it wasn't his fault. This little guy. I had Mom standing next to me when I shot this going, no! But, then there were the sad times. This woman, her daughter's name was Sierra, got abducted and killed. But she accepted me into the family and allowed me to share these moments with her while I looked for her daughter and through the time after that until they found the daughter. People allowed us to be in their lives, which to me was just one of those things that I never took for granted. Here somebody's opening up. This woman had lost her first baby because she didn't get any prenatal care. She got prenatal care the second time around, allowed me to be in the delivery room when she had the baby for a story for the Flint Journal. Paul Spanola, I believe his last name was, Paul's Pipe Shop, downtown Flint, world champion pipe smoker. But just to hang out with people, he was in his 90s. He would hang out and tell stories and just, slices of life and find these little moments of people doing different things. But one of the things I liked the best was shooting sports. I just loved to shoot sports. I didn't care if it was, T-ball or, Dixie Motor Speedway or Tiger Woods. I got to cover the Buick Open every, 15 years, I think, there the whole week, especially when I went to the Flint Journal. I was at the Saginaw News, and then I went to the Flint Journal. And at Flint, I was lucky enough to be there basically Sunday to Monday, for 7, 8 straight days. But you would see all these little details and do all these little stories and all these little moments. And, sit in these great places, a little spot between the Red Wings bench, occasionally get to sit right there. This was Barry Sanders' first touchdown, where he got a kiss from Wayne Fonts on the side of his helmet, and I got to follow Barry for years, A lot of the sports shooting, just like my bird shooting, comes all on my own time. That would be my Sunday off or Saturday off, and I would go photograph, the Lions or the Tigers or whatever. Got to photograph the '84 World Series, sat on the field right out of college. Kirk Gibson when he hit his home run, so that was 45 years, 50? What is it? I don't even know. Yeah, the '84. But the things we were given, we were told to solve problems. Basically, you're given an assignment. Hey, you have to come up with a cover picture for the preview for the Tigers season. And so it's like, okay, your subject's going to be Cecil Fielder. You got to come up with some kind of cool thought. So I had this idea. I'd put all these baseballs down with a hole in the middle, and I had 10 minutes to get Cecil out there and sit in the middle of the hole and shoot this picture from up above from the ladder. Cecil came out and said, "No way. I'm not going to sit in there. That's going to look really silly." And I said, "Cecil, come on. This is going to look really great." And he goes, "Give me your camera. Let me go up there." And so he climbed up, and you sit there. And I sat there. He looked at it and he said, "Oh, that's really cool." And then he let me shoot. I had to make a lot bigger hole than I had for me when he sat down. That guy, he was a big guy. But these were the kinds of things we did. I like to tell stories. That's my biggest thing, where I would take an idea and I might follow it for a year and a half, 2 years sometimes, just to do a progressive story from a beginning to an end. But this was one that my boss, John Dixon, that's here tonight, I went to Tiger Stadium for one game. I said, "Let me go down there." This was the last week Tiger Stadium was going to be there. Let me go down. I have this idea. I'm going to shoot, all these kind of time exposure pictures, and just I'll try to come up with some kind of little story on Tiger Stadium. And so I came back after that first night, and he's like, "How did it go?" And I said, "It went good." He goes, "Well, how many more games are there?" I said, 6. And he goes, "Well, why don't you go to all of them?" And for me, I was at a smaller paper before that, and we'd have to go one day, one time, your own time, and do these stories. Finally, I got to work for a little bigger paper, and we had a little more resources. So I ended up going to Tiger Stadium for, 6 more times. I flew 2 helicopter shots over the top. This was actually 200 exposures on the same frame of film with a flash going off right at the end. All underexposed, so the things that stayed stable ended up looking rock solid, and the other stuff that moved. I wanted to give the feeling that Tiger Stadium had been there a long, long, long time, and kind of like ghost-like pictures. And this is the memory I had of Tiger Stadium that I wanted to reproduce as a kid, walking with my dad with my mitt and my glove and my hat, and so that's one of my favorite pictures that I got out of that. But you remember Tiger Stadium, obstructed views? Remember that? Can't see the batter, you'd have a seat and you couldn't even see the batter, So I was trying to show all this stuff that, would be obsolete at Comerica. But this was the last game, the 7th inning stretch, the last pitch, actually, with all the flashes going off in the background. Whoops, that was Trammell and Whitaker meeting at second base for the last time afterwards. And this was the aerial I flew. It's a little hard to see in here, but the skylight's very, very red. The sun was really low, everything went black except for the sun on the buildings in the back. But those are the kinds of things I like to do as a photojournalist. I did a project in Flint called Sense of Community, where when I went to Flint, they created a job for me, and basically the editor asked me why the hell I would come to this godforsaken place. And I said, well, I thought about it, and I said, you're gonna let me take pictures, which my old job, I was a photo editor. And I said, but then I got thinking about it and I thought, you know, there's probably like 93% good people here instead of 94. It's how you look at it. I like to do positive and uplifting stories, and I came up with this idea then, was able to develop it into a photo column that ran weekly on page 5 of the A section every Sunday. I got the whole page to do this. And so I would find people in Flint that did just wonderful grassroots things that hadn't lost hope for Flint, that it could be a better place. And this man, his brother was in the hospital, and he was out picking up trash because that's what his brother would have done if he was there along Saginaw Street. And these people made a 9/11 memorial and wrote every name by hand. I don't know how many times as the sun bleached it away. But she wrote everybody's names on these boards down by the old Buick City. Woman taught incarcerated, children of incarcerated mothers. She would donate her time to teach them and to help them out. This man went around through the city of Flint to tell them about tax breaks they were due if they would just apply or just do their taxes, they could get these refunds. And this man was my favorite man I ever met in my life. Clifford Smith, he would walk up and down Saginaw Street and he would just wave at people. He just waved, and people, they honked at him, he would do a double pump with the umbrella, and he said, I asked, why do you do this? He said, well, you know, you got to have a calling in life, and I didn't have one, and this is what God told me to do, and if I can make somebody's day a little bit better, that's what I'm going to do. So he just did that for literally probably a decade, if not more. But so those are the kinds of stories I like to do as a photojournalist. After I left photojournalism, I was in Flint, got a call into the office that my department was going to be reduced from 10 to me. I was going to be the only guy left. And that was actually 2008. I did a little stint to Myrtle Beach for about 6 years. And I got a call back to CMU, which is my alma mater. And I asked if I wanted to come back and be their photographer. So I came back to Michigan at that point. And so I started doing what I thought was journalism inside a college campus, but keeping in mind a little bit of the branding and the just, you know, showing what a great place it was. My boss there told me I wasn't a journalist anymore and I could post stuff and I could set stuff up, unlike what I could do as a journalist, which we would have considered fireable if you post something and passed it off to the public. I just couldn't do it. I just did everything natural still. I rarely would ever pose anything and try to make it look real. It just didn't work as well as just capturing what was happening. And so this is what I do to this day for a living. I still have counts for various colleges. I don't have just CMU, but I do a lot for Michigan State College of Medicine. I do Grand Rapids, Ferris, Alma. They keep me busy, but this is, again, what I do. I had 119 invoices in 2019 working for colleges. So that means about every third day I was actually somewhere shooting. And photographing for their websites, brochures, whatever they needed, and that's what I do. But then 2020 hit. And in March of 2020, we all know what happened. You know, I mean, my experience wasn't probably any different than anybody else's in here. My work dried up. You know, being a freelance employee, I relied on going to different places to work. I couldn't work from home for somebody, you know, I was there. I had to go make pictures, which I couldn't do. I still remember March 8th, my phone rang off the hook. Like, everything got canceled for the rest of the year. And they said, well, we'll call you back when things pick up. I said, all right, you know. And so it went, you know, 1 month, and I walked by the slider. I don't know when it was. So this was probably April, you know, and I saw these birds out on the deck, and I thought, you know, I got old football lenses downstairs. I got baseball, you know, I mean, you know, good motor drives, all that stuff. Why don't I just go sit on the deck and see if I can make some pictures? I made these 2 pictures the first day I went out on the deck, and I posted them, and people kind of went nuts. I couldn't sort of believe it. You know, I thought, you know, okay, I'll put bird pictures up here. I don't hardly ever put anything on Facebook. But I put these up and people were really complimentary and, oh, what great pictures and this and that. And I thought, okay, well, people are happy. I always thought if I could bring, joy and happiness to people through stories or inspire them, that was a good thing. So this was kind of a good thing. So I did a few of these. And then, as Bob told you, it got to be about July. I finally got an assignment for a magazine and they wanted me to shoot kayaks because kayaks were so hard to get during COVID. So I went out in a kayak. I had never been in a kayak, and I came back. I told my wife, I said, oh my God, this is the best thing. This is like wonderful, the freedom I have, and I can go out and I can take my cameras in there. And she's like, you better get a good kayak if you're going to take your cameras in there. So I bought a really nice Eddy line, open top kayak, and that's my kayak, and that's the marsh right across from our cottage. And I started to go out, and I didn't know what I was going to do still. She kind of sat me down. Brenda, my wife Brenda, is very involved. She's an IT person, but she's one of the people behind Tessa that helps with the RV park, and she was very involved in that. She just sat me down and she said, Steve, every day is a gift from God, and you got to make the best out of every single day. And she said, you're too talented to just, sit down there and wait for work to start again. You really got to figure out what you always wanted to do and just do it. Make the best out of every day like it's your last. Do what you always wanted to do. I'll support you. Whatever you want to do. I thought, I don't know what I always wanted to do. I had no idea what I always wanted to do because I like to do pictures. So I started doing a few more bird pictures, and this is a little later because I have camo on. I finally realized if I started wearing camo, I could get closer to things. But I'd go out in the kayak, and I just started making pictures, and I'd sit on the edge of the river, and I started noticing things around me, and this is a mayfly that was on the water, and a bass came up and got it. And so I just watched the mayfly, smallmouth bass, hit it once, and I missed it, and came back and hit it a second time, and I got it. But I started watching these little moments, and just making pictures, and I always photographed people, and I wasn't used to these really tiny things, flying all over, and I didn't know what my purpose was, but I did start getting out. Once the governor said we could come up north, we came up north. My wife worked IT from the deck. We had internet. I would start going out in the kayak and just start making pictures. And it was just really liberating. The kayak was liberating. I didn't realize the marsh across of us actually had a couple of ponds back in there. And so I took the kayak back there right off the Torch River. And, I would get out, like I said to you all in the beginning, I leave to try to get in place a half hour before sunrise. Okay? I'm out on the river in the dark. And I try to get someplace, sit there, and let whatever's going to happen. I don't pursue things, I don't chase things, I don't try to get them to fly. I find when I walk through the woods, I get the tail end of birds a lot. They're just taking off, or they're sitting still. And I did the sitting still thing for a while, and that was okay. It was fun. But to me, it wasn't as much of a challenge as to try to get them in motion and in living their lives like people live their lives. And those were the stories I told through the years. And so I started trying to photograph birds in the dark, which was difficult. And I started getting these ducks flying over my head. I still didn't have a purpose, but I had these ducks going over me and I could not get their picture. It was just in the dark. And I can literally remember at the moment saying, game on. This is my purpose right now. I am gonna figure out how to do this and capture these birds. So I started photographing birds. At that point, this was September or so, of 2020. And I started posting, and I started getting people writing me notes just saying, thank you. We are locked up in our houses. We cannot get out anywhere. And you're bringing me to the outside. You're bringing this to me where I can't get out. Thank you. And then I started having photographers say, Jessmore, you're killing it. It's what are you doing? What kind of cameras are you using? What are you, how are you getting these pictures? And it's I don't know. And I'm literally just going out, spending a lot of time. I'll spend 3-4 hours in the morning. I'll go back and edit. I'll look at my pictures. Why didn't that work? Why did this work? What could I do next time to make it work? I just started learning, and I compiled folders in my computer of just birds after birds after birds every morning. And, I started learning all these cool things about birds. Number one, like our 4-year-old down here, she can tell me every single bird, and she probably knows what this bird is, don't you? It's a nuthatch. So, what I learned about birds, though, by watching them, not just photographing when I see them and moving on, but like this. This was behind our cottage in the marsh behind our cottage, and I watched it, and there was a hole up in a red pine, and they would take the straw out, the pine straw, shake it out, tuck it in the bark, go in, take more out, shake it out, tuck it in the bark. It did that all day long. And then at night, after it aired out, like you guys would air your laundry on the line, it pulled the pine straw and put it back into the hole. So they didn't have to expend the energy to go down and find all new straw and fly all the way up and tuck it away again. But you learn these cool little stories about all these little birds, that are around us that you take for granted. And so for me, that was really eye-opening. This chickadee, it was the same thing. It couldn't have been 100 feet from the other tree. I saw it from the driveway. It was probably here to the post or here to the projector back here. And so I started with a 600 millimeter lens, and I started inching closer and closer and closer and closer. And it took me 2.5 hours, and I got up probably as close as me to Bob with an 80 millimeter lens, which is not, just a normal lens. And I sat there, and they kept flying into the holes. They just got used to me. I shot this from the side. This is a full frame with like an 80 millimeter lens. And so I learned by being patient, and by just giving it respect and giving it time, that I could make these pictures, and I could get a picture that would please me rather than a picture of just a chickadee, a reference picture. I had something that was a little more art-like. So that was my goal. And if you look, it's a white ash, black ash, the worm on the tree. You can see, pardon me, ash borer, emerald ash borer. So you learn these things, that's one of the problems with the trees, and how it all kind of symbiotic. And this hollowed out tree it used for 2 years, and then it fell over on its own, and now it had to make a new nest. Art owl, look at the camouflage with a sycamore tree, but one of the rare pictures I didn't take in Michigan. Virtually everything I take is Michigan. This is a sandhill crane down at Kensington. That's the reflection. I didn't do anything to this. This is the fall colors reflected off the water behind the sandhill crane. So positioning myself in a way with a 400 millimeter lens, I think, that allowed me to just, I did crop it, but, get that behind its head, fall color. This was with a 400 millimeter lens down the edge of a river when it was napping. First crane picture first time I ever got close to a crane. And if you go to Kensington, people here have gone to Kensington Metro Park down in Milford. It's, I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get close to cranes out in the wild. I went to Kensington, I sat down, I sat there. I had 4 cranes walk up to me and peck me looking for bird feed. I couldn't believe it. People feed birds out of their hands and all that. I went a handful of times. I said, I can't take this. This isn't what I'm about. But it was interesting to see how the birds have tamed, But this bird I was, here to the kitchen away from when I shot this. This was from my kayak. I'm on the Torch River. Scratching. Just again, they preen. They spend so much time preening and, taking care of their feathers, but there's some feathers even flying. Just the way they scratch with those claws, to me, was fascinating. I went down the sandhill crane migration this year. Anyone here has never done that? Anybody ever done it? Down in Nebraska? Oh my God. 471,000 cranes that one. Okay. Platte River, end of March. I went with a seminar with a couple of National Geographic guys, and we had a blind on the water. The sky was black with cranes when it was dark. It was just black, and it was so loud. But once is enough, but if you haven't been there, it's almost spiritual just to see this sort of thing. But I shot this the first night I got there. We were on our own after dinner, went out and just looked around, and it was a full moon. And, one of my favorite, bird pictures. I did a project in Reed's Lake down in Grand Rapids. It's about 10 minutes from my house. I got a commission from the library down there to bring nature into the library. The library's on Reed's Lake. But the first pictures I shot were from a boardwalk. It's about 241 steps, long. So the first day I got this amazing picture of a swan, and I thought, I'm just gonna do all my work from this boardwalk. I went 100 times in the next year in the morning. And when my wife would get up at 5:45, I would just get up and go over there, spend an hour or so, come back and edit, go to my shoots, whatever I did. But I would basically 1 out of 3 days went to the boardwalk, and I'm putting together a project right now. But what I like to do are capture these moments. One of my favorite moments to capture are the wings touching the ground, touching the water, the stillness, something to break the stillness. This is I've seen this happen a number of times, but this is the first time I caught it. And they have an affinity for feathers, swallows do. And they line their nests with them, they take them back, and it's a present for the mate, and males. It's one of the things like a heron or whatever, they'll bring sticks back. That's how they sort of get lucky. It's part of the mating thing. And so this was I saw this feather floating. It was really calm. I thought, something's gonna go and pick this feather up. So basically when you're out as a photographer, same as a photojournalist, you have to make decisions. You have to edit while you're in the field. What's the most important thing for me to shoot? What should I focus my attention on? Do I really need this mallard over here that I have 200 million pictures of mallards? Or do I, this heron that's sitting there not doing anything, just sleeping, or there's a feather there, potentially something might pick up. So that's how I think I try to weight what might give me the best picture. I saw that feather, I waited about 15, 20 minutes. I saw the swallow loop around, and I thought he's coming for the feather, and I latched onto the swallow as he went by and picked it up. And, anyway, I caught another one this year drinking water the same way, coming down and grabbing water with a perfect reflection on it. So I love swallows like that. They're not predictable at all. They fly like this if you've ever tried to photograph them, but at times they can be predictable. One of the most beautiful birds, trumpeter swans, which were native to Michigan, that were reintroduced to Michigan back, I believe in the 80s or 90s. But there are native birds, but the mute swans, these are mute swans with the orange bill, those are invasive species. So the mute swans will chase out the trumpeter swans. They're very aggressive. I don't know. I rarely see trumpeters on torch anymore, and if I do, usually the mute swans chase them out. But we have a number of mute swans. Sorry. There we go. Sorry. After their courtship, they come together, and sometimes you can catch that heart. But that's the only time I've ever caught that. These were some babies back on the marsh, Torch Lake Marsh, back there. They keep them. Anybody know why they ride on backs? Why lose? Predators. The big, muskie and turtles. I see turtles out all the time when I'm in my kayak, big snapping turtles. That'll eat those little guys. This year, we had no mute swans make it on Torch River, as far as I know. There was a nest, and it was full of eggs, and I don't know what happened, but both our crane nest and our one swan nest got wiped out for sure. But the little moments, again, the little babies, and you see the little bug. you know, but I try to capture these little moments that are behavioral. This is a warbling vireo, and I waited by that tree for 4 mornings for anything to come with those red buds. And finally on the 4th morning, I got about 3.5 seconds, something like this. But again, you know, it's about what's important. What kind of thing do you envision with wildlife? Most wildlife is unpredictable, but yet they're predictable. You know kind of what they're doing. Different birds are in different canopies of the woods. Something will come into that area and look for bugs if I wait long enough. And so, anyway, vireos, you'll hear their song frequently when you're in the woods around here all year round. Goldfinch, this is at Reed's Lake. They have a wildflower area along the lake. My favorite time of year is winter, though. I love to sit out in the winter. I love to sit on the edge. I go in the kayak sometimes, but if you drive by our cottage, you'll see a little screen on the corner of our property. It's about 28 inches high camo, and I'll sit behind that. And I have a perfect spot on the river that the birds go, you know, left to right or right to left. And so I just scan all the time like this. I have a no cell phone rule when I'm out. I don't look at my cell phone. Whenever I do, I miss a bird. It's inevitable. And, but so I try to spend time, you know, watching. Any ideas how I got that? Anybody? Under a dock. Yeah. So we get the ice shelf along the river, but the river doesn't freeze over. But underneath the dock, it must be the heat on the dock that opens up the water underneath the dock. So I was sitting in my little blind underneath my little pine tree and just watching. It was a beautiful summer day, like in March. It was just sunny, which was unusual. And I saw this mallard come under the dock, and I saw that light hit him, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, your mind goes 300 miles an hour. So what if he does that again? If I flop down on my belly and get really low, and you're doing all this as you do it, and I literally flopped down and laid down on the snow with I had an 800 millimeter lens, big long lens, and he hit one more streak of light, and how they're next, they cock him back as they move. He cocked his head back. I got 5 pictures with the streak on his head, and then he moved. But, you know, again, it's hard to luck out sometimes and just luck out. I mean, I guess I could shoot everything with a motor drive and continuously, you know, and have 20,000 pictures when I got in. But it's watching and seeing, and I try to pick out compositions as I photograph, like say, oh, the light's really nice over there. If I see birds flying and they're headed that way, I got to remember that that's there, that sort of thing as I shoot pictures. Another courtship display, hooded mergansers. Icebergs in Torch River. So that's a merganser, common merganser, but the wind and just little pieces of ice breaking off and big waves. But that was like one of the most fun days I ever had, just laying there with all that wind and the waves and trying to capture the birds as they tried to live through that. This is a snowy owl. It might be kind of hard to see in here, but it was one of those days that I was out and it was really, really, really cloudy. And right at the horizon, there was a break in the clouds and the sun rose and the sun came through like a spotlight and hit that snowy as it flew. And I just had to take the exposure down, no burning or dodging really, other than just darken my picture a little bit. And it just was spotlit. So. Another snowy owl. I don't know about you guys. When I go out, this is at Muskegon Wastewater, and I would go there when I first started birding, you know, a lot, but I'd sit there, and this day really turned me off. There must have been 30, 40 people chasing this snowy owl. And I pulled up, and I stood there, and everybody, you know, they keep creeping closer and closer and closer, and then it flies. And they all hop in their cars and go down, do it again, closer, 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 stress it out, flies. I just stayed put. 3 times people chased it down the causeway, and the 3rd time it flew right back at me and just landed right there. I don't like, number one, these birds are down here because they're stressed in the tundra, so they fly all the way here, all that stress flying on their bodies. They're looking for food, it's milder here than there, so they're gonna rest up and, you know, store up energy and eat during the winter. A number of birds have died from that added stress of being chased by people. So that's the sort of thing I try not to do at all, is get into those masses of photographers. This is from my front yard at Torch River, down where the no wake sign is. Just there, they would go and preen in the winter. But I love to be out during the winter and the weather and the snow flying. Bald eagle. I find that if you just stay still, you just sit and wait, stuff happens, you know. Honestly, this was for my little project at Reed's Lake. I'd sit down on Reed's Lake, I'd put camo on, just a camo hoodie. I'd kneel down right below the railing and I'd just sit. That's how I got that reflected green heron shot. It flew in 15, 20 feet from me, never saw me. That flew off. Well, this guy flew in, he never saw me. And I was on my knees and I couldn't see him because of the branches of the tree. And so I just kept scooting over on my knees really slowly when he wasn't looking. And I had that 600 millimeter lens. He was probably up where these flags are like that. And all of a sudden he saw me, and that's when he saw me. I don't know if you can see the scowl. He's like, oh my God, where did you come from? And he took off. But I find that really, you know, things like this happen to me a lot because I just sit still. Honestly, I'd be sitting down there in camo and I'd have these ladies walking in the morning and they'd say, hey, have you seen the eagles yet? And they'd scream at me. It's like, yeah, I just saw them. We never see the eagles. And it's like, well, can't figure out why, you know. I've been trying to get this one for a number of years. I've got different versions of it, but I thought this was exactly what I'd always been looking for. But red-winged blackbird, they're always the first ones back, March 1st, in the marshes and swamps. I think I might have hit my mic. Oh, there we go. But just the breath, you know, just like we do, and you know, when they sing and when they try to stake out their territory, and then the females come back a couple weeks later after the males pick out the territory and then pick a mate. Another mating with the, you know, great blue herons will pick out little sticks, perfect sticks to take back to the nest, add to the nest for its mate. Well, I thought this was kind of cool with the bouquet. It looked like a little flower, you know, not just a nasty stick. So I have this on my living room wall. It's probably 4 foot wide. It looks really, really nice like that. These are kingbirds. You know, again, I'm sorry about all this mating talk, but they mate in midair. They try to. This female was having nothing to do with the male on the top. The red flare is the male. Kingbirds, we see them a lot on Torch River. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed them, little tiny birds, and very fast. They feed, they'll pick bugs right off the surface. I have some in here. Swallows, staking again territory. The brown swallow ended up going in the nest, and that's the male coming back. The female was in the nest. I have this whole story, this whole sequence of pictures. I have to figure out what to do with all these someday, but basically the male came back, the brown one flew away, the male grabbed onto the hole, the female came out of the hole, the female grabbed onto the male's forehead, like, what did you do and let this bird into our nest? Because it had babies in there. He screamed, they both screamed at the other bird going by. And I have the whole thing as a series, but it would take like, we'd be here till tomorrow. This is from, I like to show new work. So this is stuff I've shot in the last week to 10 days. But this is a kingbird from my kayak I shot last week on, here's another one picking a bug off a lily pad. Just sit and wait and watch on a kayak, and you try to put yourself into position. Kayaks, Torch River, you know, it flows all the time. So if you're not attached to something, you're going to keep moving downstream. I found that lily pads are like perfect breaks for kayaks. Sit your kayak in some lily pads and just sit there. The other thing I do is hang my leg off a lot off my kayak onto a stump or whatever, just to keep in the same spot. But then I'll have my big long lens and just watch these birds, and I'll just keep watching where they are. And it's usually the same thing. If they're there once, they'll go down the area and feed, or go around me and feed, and then they'll end up coming back to where I am if you're just patient enough. And I spent the morning just watching these little guys. Saturday, I think it was. This month I've spent 8 days up here photographing plovers, and this is one of the little chicks that's just a few days old that I photographed one morning. And then this was the one I really liked, but they brood. The babies can't. The babies have no way to regulate temperature, so they go underneath the parents just to warm up, usually 3-4 minutes, something like that, then they'll run off. But this was one of my favorites I got the other day. So Bob was talking about me giving you tips, so here's some tips. So I had no idea what I was doing. New camera, literally first day, new camera. All right, I got a new Sony A9 II camera from Norman Camera. I was going to become a bird photographer. This is the first day. I was at Kensington. I went walking way up. If you've been there, Wild Wing Lake, way up into the hills behind Wild Wing Lake with another photographer. And we found this hawk, and so we started photographing it. It was a hawk, new birder. I thought hawks were really, really cool. And I just wanted to get pictures of this hawk flying, and so we circled it from a distance, the 600 millimeter zoom lens. I had a zoom lens. And after about 10 minutes, he said, "I'm moving on." And I said, "You're leaving?" He's like, "Yeah, I got enough pictures." I said, "Well, it hasn't done anything yet." He's like, "I got enough." So he left. I stayed for 2.5 hours. And, finally it started waking up and it fanned its tail, which I thought was kind of cool. And it finally flew right over my head, and there was another photographer there, and I got this picture. And he said, "Let's follow it. Let's go down and see where it went." I said, "All right." So we walked about 100 yards through the woods, and we found it on the ground. And he was looking where the leaves are, and then he would grab them, jump up in the air, look, grab, jump, look, grab, jump, look. Nothing was moving. He went up to the tree, and he just looked at that spot. And so we stayed, and I stayed another 15, 20 minutes watching him, and he flopped. I heard a squeal, and he flopped down. He landed on whatever it was. He turned towards me. He was 40 yards away. He flew right at my head. I missed every single picture of him coming at me. He flew up in the air, and he landed up on a tree across the canopy, almost about as high as that light is. And this was the picture I ended up getting. But he had a chipmunk, and he flew up there, and the snow was on the branch. But this is the picture that won honorable mention in the National Audubon Contest. So I swept the professional division the first year that I entered. I don't know how, I was losing sleep over it, honest to God, because here I am, a guy that hasn't even had a bird picture published. I'm entering the National Audubon Contest. I have to enter as a professional bird photographer, which I'm not, because I made $5,000 doing photography, other kinds of photography, so I'm a professional, so I had to enter that division. So this one honorable mention, and then this was my situation, same lens, 200 to 600 Sony Zoom, A9 II camera. I was in my car, I was out in rural Muskegon, I was looking for hawks. I missed the hawk, saw it drive down the road, it was really, really cold. I'm in my car, I look to my right, there's a cardinal eating seeds off protruding plants, out of the snow. The snow must have been, 2-3 feet deep. I'm in my car, bird's over here, I'm watching it. So I roll down all my windows, I open up my sunroof, I turn off my heat, because the heat rays coming out of the car window will mess up your pictures. Okay, that's one thing I've learned by that point in time. I knew that from journalism, that would happen. So I opened up everything, I turned off the car, I sat there and watched them. And I watched them just go from weed to weed, and I'm thinking, okay, well, he's gonna go from this weed to that weed next, and so I focused on it. And this was the first picture I took. So, and if you see, that's the picture that's right here, but this won first place in the National Audubon Contest. So the lesson is just be patient, try to learn the behavior of your subject, whether it's people, whether it's birds, whether it's deer, whatever it is, kids, you know, the behavior. That's what I want to show. That's what you'll know what it's going to do next, hopefully. And so it ended up on their web pages, and what was really cool, I thought, was it ended up on their membership card. So I don't know if any of you guys got that last. So the next year I entered again. My kids said, you know, hey, that was really great, Dad, but lightning doesn't strike twice. So you do really well. You know, don't worry about it if you don't win. I said, I'm not worried. I'm just going to enter the contest. So this is a situation, again, here's a lesson, you know, pre-visualize to a point what you're going to photograph. I saw this, I'm thinking, how can I make a really interesting picture? What would a really interesting picture be? Here's all these birds out there. I'm limited, I'm on a dike, kind of like this dike, this jetty out here. I'm on a dike, you know, they're out in the water. Wind's like 40 miles an hour blowing from the left. It's like, man alive, what am I, that's so cool, but how am I going to photograph that? So I got a little closer and I thought, what if I had the whole frame filled with ducks? That would look really cool. No, it wouldn't. I got it, and that was the exact picture I wanted, and I thought, I don't know, you know, this isn't what I thought, you know, like, you know, why isn't it looking good? And I thought, well, I thought there'd be swirls and you could see the different ducks and all that stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's gotta be something here. I photographed for 1 hour and 20 minutes. All of a sudden, literally, a bird, I'm just gonna do this because this is how it went. He got pushed up, he went, he sat down. All right, so I'm like, what in the world was that? Like, you know, it just, you're photographing and something happens, you're just used to focusing and shooting and because something changed and you shoot and it, whatever, but so this is what happened. Look at the difference between just, you know, the same picture and having that moment, you know. So I had 2 shots at it, right? 2 wing flaps and he sat down. I had 2 pictures that were really nice and this is the one I went with. Then I entered it again, and I got the same call from the photo editor from Audubon that I won again. But I won. This one won the most creative picture out of all 10,000 and some pictures entered. So, and it ended up. This was the day they announced all the awards, and this was what was really cool. Though. It ended up on the cover of the magazine. So. Thanks. I mean, but seriously, this isn't anything, honest to God, any of us couldn't do. All right? Honestly. I bet every one of you guys could have done. It's just a thought process. Okay? It's a thought process, learning about birds. And I'm going to say I got, you know, I think all the years of sports and all that really helped me, and all the moments shooting, you know. I would shoot a Lions game and shoot, honestly, like you would plan on the number of reels that would fit in the developing tank, like 8 rolls. I would shoot 8 rolls times 36, that's 200, and what, how many is that? 8 times 4, 320, 300-ish pictures for a whole game. Barry Sanders, manual, focus lenses, all that stuff. But you could develop 8 rolls of film, so that's what I'd shoot. I bet you I 2,500 pictures in the morning now, you know, because digital. Now we're digital. It allows you to be more free with trying things and, you know, just taking chances, you know. And that's one of those chances. I just sat there for, you know, I knew there was something, and anyway, I was happy that there was. So I was taking a lot of pretty bird pictures, okay? I mean, I won all these pretty awards and stuff, and I got thinking about it, and one morning, like, I'm literally out on the Torch River in the morning, you know, and I'm just floating down the middle of the river, and it was, I don't know how many of you guys have ever been out there in the middle of the water before sunrise, before the line of boats, before everything. It's so quiet. And I'm sitting there, like it's bone-chilling quiet, you know, and one morning, it was my day off, and I'm up there, and I'm in the middle of the river, and I'm going down the river, and I just literally, just like put the kayak paddle across my lap, and I said, I am so blessed. Look at this, you know, listen to this. There's nothing. I've got this great life, and I'm pretty healthy, and I'm getting to do what I like to do, and there's just got to be something I can do with these pictures. Honest to God, I turned to my right, and right here was this loon. It was my buddy, and he was just like coming along the river right next to me. And he got to know me. Last year, I spent over 40 mornings with that loon pair that had the 2 loons. I photographed both loons hatching. I photographed the pair building their nest. I photographed the firstborn almost killing the secondborn with the pecking order. It was unbelievable. It was more traumatic than anything I'd ever seen, even in Flint. Honestly, it was worse than bullets flying or anything to see one little chick going after another chick and nobody doing anything about it. Okay? But I got to do all this stuff, and I would sit out there, but like, here's this loon literally just floating down with me when I turned right, not making any noise, and he just sped by me, and that's where I was kind of going to see if they were down there, and he led the way, and I went. And I got thinking, you know, like, this group, the other groups I'm involved in, you know, the group Tessa, my wife's involved in, we're all trying to save this place for our kids and our grandkids and their grandkids and all the people after it, and there must be something I can do with my pictures to help this process. And at that point, I thought, you know, like, this is what I need to be doing, is doing these stories, you know, with these birds that I care so much about that don't have a voice. And I have a voice. I have a writing degree. I don't have a photography degree, but that never stopped me. So I can do pictures, I can do words, and I pitched the story to Audubon magazine, actually, at that point. And it was on Torch River. And my working title was The No-Wake Zone, the calm between the storms. The storms being the boat traffic. That's just crazy. I went by the sandbar on the way here today. I couldn't believe like how many boats are by there and go by our house. So anyway, I started photographing these little areas, and if you look, this is the one, you can see the holes in between the grasses and the tufts, and they're eroding away. They're just like literally eroding away. And I have my drone license. That was one of the things I got. I always thought drones, aerial photos were a wonderful way to help tell a story, but there's a little Torch River down there to the right, and here's the mass of boats that comes up and down, you know, at least a lot of them do. So I'm working on this story, basically trying to contrast and show these little areas. This area by the no wake sign, I have a picture in here I'll show you. But, you know, it's all eroding. And when we were here, I started coming here 10 years ago. Nobody used to park along the Torch River. And they always just went up and down the river, it seemed like, to go to the sandbar and a rare boat here and there. But now the chute just gets packed. The brown algae, we live in such a beautiful place. Look at everything, it's so beautiful, but it's not, you know, it's not unlimited, you know. There's a lot of stress. I mean, I just get so discouraged when I see groups like ours, I can say ours, or others, whoever put up these signs. This is the first day of Memorial Day weekend, the sign came down, you know. The next morning I went out in my kayak before sunrise and went to check on everything, and they were down and pushed into the reeds. And, you know, in between I'm finding these wonderful birds trying to live, you know, and trying to search for food on the still waters. They can't do that in the middle of the day. And, you know, just the contrast of the chute and just hours, you know, trying to show the trouble. And Brenda and I and my wife have talked about this. It's like, we're not against boaters. We're not against people enjoying using our beautiful river. You know, we just want people to respect it like we do. This is our front yards. This is it's like a roadway at times. And at other times when people aren't using it is when you see the other residents, you know, like these guys. And so this is a project I've been working on, and I'm going to pitch, you know, at some point. And I'm just been photographing nothing, I showed this to one of my National Geographic friends. I said, I want to be a conservation photographer. What do I have to do? He said to me, the first words out of his mouth were, you have to stop being a journalist. I said, what? I said, I've always been an objective guy. I'm not trying to like play up just one side. I want to show both sides. I want to talk about I want to be the voice for that loon, but I want to be a voice for the residents. And, you know, he said, you have to make me care about your river. You know, you can't do it by being objective. You have to show that you care. If you show you care to people, they'll care. And then they'll care and they'll tell somebody else and they'll care. So I guess this is what I'm trying to learn to do, in trying to take my journalism and my art and my love for birds and my love for our river and our love for, you know, what we all come up here for every week or every summer, or whether we live up here, and just try to maybe say we all need to just take a step back and just sort of protect this. You know, what do we do as a group? What do we do as, I mean, I've gone to, you know, different meetings. Nobody seems to have control over what's in the river. People talk about erosion on the shores, but what about in the middle of the river? And, you know, how it affects birds. Like, this is a green heron. It can't hunt. This is one of its normal hunting spots. This is on Monday morning, and all the scum and all the feathers and all the weekend scum, it can't see through the water anymore, so it has to try to find other places to hunt. This was the area to, if you go up the Torch River, past the no wake sign, right before the chute on the right, this was in 2012. So I started researching on the web. These people, Favors Ventures LLC, they would just post their little river trips on all our different rivers in their boat. And I found it, and it was the Torch River, and I said, my God, that looks familiar. That's the same area. This is 10 years later. And if you look, right above the white pontoon boat, the sign's there. It says environmental area, please stay off. You know, I don't know who put the sign up, erosion zone, please stay off. So the shot on the left is 2021. The shot on the right is the sign sawed off in 2022. Okay? It's not just power boats. There's 13 kayaks piled on there. You know, people don't realize, you know, that, I mean, this area is basically destroyed. It was once as big as this whole sandbar here, pretty much, and it's just disappearing. This is it last summer. This is the same angle Sunday. The plants are nowhere near as tall. And, you know, I still wasn't really getting it, like, why is all this happening? Well, is it wakes? You know, is it just current from the river? Is it weather? Is it just because, you know, it happens in time just like everything else? But I think it's a combination of everything, but especially the use nowadays. You know, we just have so much use on the river. These herons and red-winged blackbirds, this is on one of the areas, you know, battling. And the geese have, you know, a lot of, which is okay with me. I don't really want them in my yard, and then that's not a good thing to say probably. But, you know, there's marshes and stuff around that I would hope they could go to, but they don't have any place to go that they want to go either at times because of loss of habitat. You know, I still see things like mink. The cranes, this was right behind the chute where you go out to the, in the lagoon. Sandhill crane had a nest there last year, but it was within probably 15, 20 feet of the edge of the chute, you know, one of the two edges that people park against. And the dogs would come across there. I sat out there over 40 times, and the dogs would come across and scare them out. And I tried to warn people, and long story short, the eggs never hatched. They sat on them for an extra from Memorial Day till 4th of July before they abandoned them, but they never hatched. There were 2 eggs. I don't know if it had to do with people. I imagine it had to do with everything. This year they laid nests about 20 yards to the right, and it got evidently washed out. But I saw it in early April. It had 2 eggs. When I came back a few weeks later, it was literally gone, no eggs. So I don't know what happened to it. But again, a lot of the, we have seawalls, we have whatever, the animals are trying to adjust. I thought this was great. This is almost an exact picture of the lagoon that these loons were born in on this garage door of the boathouse. So this is the other area. That's right where the no wake sign is now. And this is where it was 10 years later. This is how small it had gotten. And that's all I ever knew it. And here's a little series from the top left, but to show a lot of the different wildlife. And if you notice, it moves from the left side of the sign to the right side of the sign. This is all last year. And then it moved way to the right side of the sign. And I couldn't really figure out why. Then I went out and looked at it and realized there's no dirt left. It's just the roots sitting on, all the dirt had been washed away. And basically the waves hit it first out there, these central areas to the river. And then that's the way it is now. So it's gone. So from 2012 till last year, that whole big area has been eroded away. So this is why it's so important, I think, the job that you guys are doing and all our groups are doing, but to try to raise awareness to all this. And I'm not sure what the solution is. I think the solution, my only solution, is to make people care, that we're all sharing the space and using it. So this is a story I've been working on, but these loons, I took a class this year from Michigan State, and I've tried to increase my knowledge at least so I'm a little smarter at these things I'm talking about. But one of the things they said is that an area as it develops, it was on lake ecology. As an area develops, you won't have less species, you'll just have different species. You'll have the same kind of number of species of birds, they'll just be different. There'll be birds that are more able to adjust to urban, like we see the red-winged blackbirds and the grackles and the robins and mallards and the birds, that we see at home too. But one of the indicators, the last indicators they said was the common loon. You still have loons, there's still hope. They're still able to find this wild enough to make, that all is not lost. So, we've been lucky on Torch River, and I know you guys put up platforms this year, didn't you?
I'm
Skegemog. So we've had more loon families around. I've heard there's more loons in the area from the TCC I talked to that they've said, but we've lucked out that we had 2 babies last year, I know. The year before we had 1, and this year there's 1 baby. But this is some of the work that I've done with the loons just over this last year, but this was the morning it hatched. The first one hatched. You can see it right in the middle. Dad carried the egg off the nest. They actually carry the eggs away to swamp someplace away from the nest so predators don't find them in there and don't know there's a new baby around. I thought that was kind of neat. I'd never seen that before. But I think these guys are like an indicator for me why I keep doing what I do, why I get up every morning, why I get out there when I'm up here, why I make, that 3-hour trip from Grand Rapids to here, because I know that's kind of waiting for me. I don't know that I was ever that excited when I got up north to read books on the deck, but I am now that I know these little guys. That was female mallard came into its territory, and I wish I would have had a wider lens, which I didn't, but the male loon came underwater, torpedoed underwater, and came out, and then went under again. Scared it away, but that's a defensive, pose from the loons. This was this morning, or not this morning, it was probably last month up here with the new baby born. That's how a baby will tell mom or dad it's hungry. They pinch their beak. That guy's getting too big to ride anymore. Fish fly hatch. I will literally be in my kayak, and I've tried to figure out if they're the same loons or not, you know. But literally the guy will come up to me, "You're the Bob." He'll just sit there and look at me, and I'm like, "Hey buddy, how you doing?" You know, and I'll just talk to him. The other day, the female got all upset at me, and she reeled up like on the water, and I came into the lagoon the night it was born, and it was stormy, and she got all upset with me, and so I turned around and I left. The next morning I went back, and the male came up to me as I came into the lagoon and just went aside me. He went back to the female. He came back again right next to me, went back to the female. Third time he came over and just sat there. Said, "Hey bud," we talked a little bit. He went back to the female, and the female came up to me. This isn't the female, this was another. And I'm going to show you the picture. She came up to me and gave me the side eye right there. She came up to the front of my kayak. Like, he went back to her. I know he went back to her and said, "He's not bad. Go talk to him. Like, go over and see him. Just say hi." And she came up to my kayak, looked at me side-eyed, and then went back again. But didn't get upset with me at all. They've only been upset with me twice, 2 times in 2 years. And I don't think it was really me. It was more the situation. So whenever they do that or show I'll leave. But I'm usually here to one of the posts away from them. I don't try to get too close to them. A lot of times they'll surface, though, literally 6-8 feet from me. So this was one of the last ones I shot of them, but thought it was beautiful. Just kind of captured the way I feel out there with the sparkles in the water like it is right now. It was kind of one of these days. But that's what I got. So I hope... I went too long, I apologize. I could go on forever, honestly. I have so many pictures. I try to consolidate it, but I feel good doing it here because this is our place, and we gotta protect it.
What do you say after all of that information? Isn't that amazing?
But I do a calendar every year, all right? I do all our local birds, and I have last year's, I'll just show you. Getting ready to do a new one. Sold them to 28 states last year, all right? I'm sorry, but can y'all hear me? But anyway, they're all Michigan birds, and they're all pretty much the quartz from Michigan, so they're on my website. I'm going to do another one if anybody's interested. I had a lot of favorable remarks from it. It's not a huge money maker for me, but it's been fun to do, and it's kind of like a cool business card for me, definitely. And I think I've gotten more college work off this calendar than I have anything else. But I have some shows around too. There's one in Flint right now on North Lawn, and I'm hoping to get some more up here maybe.
And please pick up a card if you're interested in contacting Steve. How about your prints? Do you make your prints available?
Yeah, I sell prints, and I actually have a trademark for the whole birds doing stuff. I have birds doing stuff, hats and stuff now, and I'm not trying to sell them to you, but I'm trying to wear them, and I thought that'd be pretty cool with the birds. So I've actually applied for a federal trademark for the birds doing stuff, which is the term that my buddy told me. I said, "Why are my pictures so different?" He goes, "I don't know, your pictures are birds doing stuff." And I said, "That's pretty cool. That is true. That's in the back of my mind. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I always say to myself, is that bird doing it." No, all right, I'm gonna move on.
I think Steve's a wonderful ambassador for this whole area, so thank you.
Tech literate, I want to know about your camera. Is it silent?
He asked, he's not tech literate, he said, is my camera silent? My camera will go totally silent. Yeah, you can, it's a mirrorless camera. If anybody's heard of mirrorless, I used to use what are called DSLRs before that film. And I switched to Sony, a recommendation of a camera store friend. He said, you really need to try Sony's. I did. I love them. I love that my cameras, every single button controls different things. I never have to take my eye away from my viewfinder because I can change my ISO, I can focus, I can shutter speed, everything. I can change everything without taking my eye away from a bird flying at me. Change my, everything on the fly. So that's why I really love them. I have two of the same cameras now. I have two, they're called Sony A1s, which are the flagship cameras. But when I won the Audubon, honestly, I had the entry level. It's a good camera, but it was an A9 II and a 200 to 600 zoom. And truly, Sigma makes some great zooms. If anybody's looking to just sort of start, getting into this for under, I think they're under $800 maybe, for a nice 150 to 600 millimeter zoom. The cameras have come down way down in price. Now mirrorless. So, you can get into it for not outrageous prices. I have a 600 millimeter big lens now that I bought after I won the Audubon. I have some other stuff I probably wouldn't have bought if I wouldn't have got so serious. But for the most part, they're just wonderful tools.